Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, we are going to create a basic currency conversion app using just JavaScript. So let's get to writing our code. We are going to be using Bootstrap. When you come over to the Bootstrap website, you click on Get Started and it's going to take you here. Scroll down, you grab the starter template over here. You click copy there. You come over here to the index.html file and you paste all of it. So as you can see, this is my index.html file. I have my index.html file here. I have my index.js file created already and my index.css file. Here is my JS folder, which is my JavaScript folder, and my CSS folder, which has my CSS file. So first things first, let's link our CSS file. So we don't forget to do that. So go to the CSS folder and the CSS file, and let's set a type attribute to text/CSS. So that's that. So let's get rid of this comment here. Let's do that. Let's get rid of this comment up here also, and let's get rid of this comment here also. So let's change this to conversion app, and let's get rid of the hello world in the body tag. Let's save that. So let's start creating the landing page of our app. So I'm going to create a section here, and I'm going to set the ID of that section, and I'll call it main section. And I'm going to create a container div right there because I'm using Bootstrap. So I'm going to also create a row right here, div class set to row, and I'll be using 6 columns for this, and I'll be saying div class call sm6, and I'd pass in a class for myself there. I'd call this right, and I'd pass in the h1 tag. My h1 tag is going to say convert, complete, and be convinced. Let's just put something basic. You can do better with that. So let's save that, and let's come beneath our h1 tag and let's pass a paragraph tag. And my p tag, I'm going to say over here we are focused on the right. All right, so this is all we are going to have in our p tag. So beneath our p tag, we are going to have a button. Note, all of this is inside this call sm6 row right here. So we are going to have a button here, and that button is just going to say explore API. So we are going to assume we have an API on this project, explore API. So let's create our second call sm6 div right there, and let's pass this call sm6, and let's say left. Let's pass in a class for ourselves. Let's say left there, and in this div we are going to have a h4 tag. The h4 tag is going to have this conversion board. So beneath the h4 tag is where our conversion board is going to stay. So beneath our h4 tag, we're going to create a form. So a form tag, and in our form tag we're going to have an input tag there that's going to have a type of number, an ID, which is going to be set to my input. So say my input. We're going to have a placeholder that's going to say enter Naira value, let's paste that, enter Naira value. So we're going to close that input tag over there. Now we're going to have a label that's going to say dollars, and that's it. And beneath this label we're going to have a div, and our div is going to have an ID that's going to be set to $ID. We are going to make use of all of these, and you're going to understand how to make use of them yourself. So just close the div, nothing in between the div there. And we are going to have another label. This label is going to be set to pounds. So come beneath the label there and pass in a div tag also with the ID of pounds. Let's say pounds ID. So we're going to save that, and let's pass in a class here for ourselves. This is not a bootstrap class, so let's call this color1, and let's close the div over there. Now let's create our last label, which is going to be for the euro. So let's close that and let's say euros, and let's come beneath our label. This is label, not lab. Let's come beneath our label now, and let's pass in a div tag with an ID of euros ID, and let's set a class for ourselves, which is going to be color2. Let's close that. So this is all we are going to have for our HTML file. So let's go to our browser to see what we have before we start writing our CSS and our JavaScript. So to go to our browser, let's come over to our folder. You can use your live server if you have one. I have a live server here, but I'm going to be doing it the old way. So I'm going to come over here in my folder, right click on my index.html file and select Google Chrome. So you can see this is all we have, looking very raw, no CSS, no JavaScript. So we are going to make this look better. So first things first, we need to change the font family. So to change the font family, let's come over here to fonts.google.com and let's select a font for ourselves. I'll be going with the Poppins font, and I'll come over here, I'll go select the regular 400. This is what I'm going to be using. You can select any other font you want to use. I'll grab this, take it to my HTML file, and I'll paste it over here, anywhere in the head tag. I'll paste it there, and I'll come here, select the font family, and I'll go to my index.css file, and I'll throw in a wildcard, paste the font family, and set margin to 0, and set padding to 0. And that's that. So let's go back to our website. Let's see what we have. So let's refresh our page to see what we have. As you can see, our font family has been changed to Poppins, and this looks better. So let's go back to our VS Code and let's start writing some CSS for our website. So we are in our index.css file currently. So in our wildcard, I want to add 2 more properties, a background color and a color for the whole of our website. So I'll come beneath the padding there, I'll say background color, and I'll set this to hashtag, let's say 1C1424. I think that works. Then I'll set a color property to not really white. Let's set this to D6. Let's save that. So let's go back to our browser to see what we have. Okay, this looks better now. So let's go back to our CSS and let's write more CSS. So I'm going to be selecting the right class here, which is this div here that stops here. I passed in a class with the name right for myself. So I'm going to be selecting this div with this class here, the right class. So now I'm going to be grabbing the h1 tag here in this div. So I want to style the h1 tag there in that div. And you know, I passed in a class myself in this div with the name right. So I'm going to be using this class name to grab this h1 tag. So I'm going to say right h1, and I'd say font size. I'd set the font size to 62 pixels. I want it to be very big like that. And I'll set a margin property. I'll set the top to 160 pixels. I'll set the right to 0, set the bottom to 0, and I'll set the left margin to 60 pixels, and I'll save that. So when I go back to our page and I reload our page, you see we have this. The website's beginning to look better. So let's go back. Now, the next thing to style will be the paragraph tag here, and I'm going to use this class also to select the paragraph tag over there. So I'm going to say dot right and p there, which is our p tag, and I'm going to say margin left. I'm going to set the margin left to 60 pixels so it aligns with the margin left of our h1 tag, which is also 60 pixels. So when I reload the page, you see they're both on the same line. So let's go back. Now we have one more thing to style in that div, which is the button tag. So I'll be saying right button, and I'll pass in a height for the button, a height of 60 pixels, and I'll pass in a width for the button, a width of 190 pixels, and I'd also pass in a border radius for the button, a border radius of, let's say, 8 or 9 pixels. Let's go with 8. And the margin left is going to be a margin left property of 60 pixels, so it stays on the same line with our other properties there. So let's go back to our browser. Let's reload our page to see what we have, and that's that. Our button is looking good. So we are done with this section of our page. Now let's come over to this section here. So let's go back to our VS Code, go back to our index.html file, and let's see what we have in this section. We have the conversion board and the form. So I passed in a class for myself here with the name left. So I'm going to go back to my CSS file, and I'll be using that class I passed for myself with the name left. I'll be grabbing this h4 tag that says conversion board with the class left. So it's going to be similar to what we had before. I'm going to say left h4. So that's me grabbing the h4 tag. So our h4 tag is just going to take a margin top property of 100 pixels. That's that. So let's save that and let's go back to our browser. Let's see what we have. Okay, and this is not looking bad at all. I want this h4 tag to stay in the center of this div. So I'm going to come over here in our HTML file, and I'll be using a bootstrap class called text center. Just pass that in there, text center, and that's that. So let's go back to our CSS file and let's keep styling. So after the h4 tag, the next tag we have is the form tag. So let's go back to our CSS file and let's style our form tags. Here we're going to say left, and we're going to say form. So we're going to pass in a height for our form. The height for our form is going to be 75 VH, and we're going to have a background color for the form. So background color is going to be, so let's pass in 342B 47. That's somewhat close to what we have on the body tag there. And let's pass in a width of 400 pixels. Also a margin that's going to take 20 pixels for the top, 0 pixels for the right, 0 pixels for the bottom, and 70 pixels for the left. Now let's pass in the clear both property there. Let's set the border radius to 8 pixels, and let's set the padding on our form tag to 30 pixels. So let's save this. Let's go to our browser to see how our form looks like. So let's come back here, let's reload our page. As you can see, we have the conversion board here at the center of the page, and we have our form looking like this. So what we are going to do next is to style the input tag, which has the placeholder of enter Naira value. So let's go back to our CSS file and let's grab that. So to grab the input tag, we are going to use this class, grab the form, and then grab the input tag. So let's come back to our CSS file and let's say dot left, which is the class name, and form, which has the input tag, and let's pass in input here. So that's that. So we're going to set a width for our input tag, which is going to be 100%. It's going to occupy 100% of the space. So next we are going to set a border radius of 6 pixels, and we are going to set a height of 40 pixels and a padding of 8 pixels, and we're going to set a border to none. After that, finally, we're going to have a margin bottom of 10 pixels. So let's go back to our page and let's see what we have. I want you to take note of what the padding does. The padding keeps this little space between the enter naira value and the edge of our font. So let's go back to our CSS and let's take it with this padding property here. Now let's save that. Let's come back to our browser. Let's reload. As you can see, the enter naira value is sitting directly on the edge of this input field here. But meanwhile, if I put back the padding property, which is set to 8 pixels, and I save that, and I come back here, you see there is this space between the enter naira value and the edge of our input field, and this makes it look better. So that's what we want. So let's go over to the next properties in our index.html file. So the next properties we have are the label tags and the div tags. So we passed in some custom classes for ourselves here, like color1 and color2. So let's see how we are going to use that. So first of all, let's grab this div. Let's style all the divs we have in this file. So let's go back to our index.css file and let's call the left class, and let's call the form tag, and let's call the div tag. So we're going to set the width here to 100%, and we're going to set the margin bottom to 10 pixels. So we're going to set the height of the div to 80 pixels, and we are going to set the padding to 30 pixels for the top, 0 pixels for the right, 0 pixels for the bottom, and 8 pixels for the left. And let's save that. So let's go back to our browser. Let's see what we have, and that's that. This looks better. So let's go back to our CSS file. Now let's use the color1 and color2 class that we set for ourselves in those tags. So let's call the color1 class. We are going to set a color for those bars that you see there. So let's set a background color set to #4A1 42D, and let's save that. Now let's set a color for the color2 class, and let's set a background color which is going to be set to 8C0D28. Let's save that. So let's go back to our browser. Let's see what we have. Reloading our page, you see we have this. So the reason we had no color class for this field here is because we want this field to retain the color of the input field there. So we just wanted to change the colors for the pounds field and the euros field. So we are done with our index.html file and our index.css file. This is all the HTML and CSS we are going to need for this project. So now, what do I want to happen? I want a user to come in here and type in a naira value, let's say 700 naira, and as the user is typing in a naira value, the dollar equivalent is going to be displayed here automatically. The pounds equivalent is going to be displayed here automatically, and the euro equivalent is going to be displayed here automatically. So that's basically what I want to do, and I'm going to do that using JavaScript, just JavaScript. So let's go back to our VS Code and let's start writing that. So first things first, I have my index.js file here, and I have to link my index.js file with my index.css file, and I'll do that here. I'll come down here and I'll say script, and in my script tag I'm going to pass in an src attribute that's going to call the JS folder and my index.js file, and that's that. That's all I need to link my JS file with my index.html file. So let's go over to our index.js file and let's start writing some JavaScript. So over here in our index.js file, this is where we are going to write all the JavaScript for this project. It's not going to be overwhelming, so just pay attention though. So the first thing we are going to do is we are going to grab the input field, and here is the input field here in our form tag. So this is the input field. We are going to grab the input field using this ID, the ID of my input. So to do that, I'll use a const keyword there, and I'll set a variable called inserted. The variable name here is not default, it's something I came up with. We are going to say document.getElement by ID, and we are going to pass in the ID, which is my input. So with this, we have grabbed that input field in our HTML form, and we have stored it in the variable called inserted. So the next thing we are going to do, we are going to add an event listener to that field, and the event listener is going to listen for an input. So when a user starts typing something into the field, the event listener is going to be triggered. So to do that, we are going to say inserted. I'm saying inserted because currently our input field is stored in this variable called inserted. So inserted.add event listener, and event listeners take two arguments. The first is going to be the type of event, which is input, when a user inputs anything in the field. So in our case, a number. So we're going to pass in a function, a callback function. This function is going to be triggered when the user starts inputting anything in the field. So we are going to open that. So let's use the let's keyword to create this variable. Let's call it converted. Let converted be equal to event.target.value, and let's save that. So this variable that we just came up with is not a default variable. Let's go to the next line inside the callback function, and let's set another variable. Let's call this $value. So the $value variable, which is not also a default variable name, which is something I came up with, is going to store the $ID. So let's go back to our HTML file and let's look at where we have the $ID. We have the $ID here. So the $value in our index.js file is going to grab this div tag here. So let's $value be set to document.getElementById, and let's pass in $ID there. So that's that. So let's come beneath the $ID there. So let's use the $value variable, which currently stores this ID. So let's say $value, and we are going to use the inner HTML function, which is a default JavaScript function. So we are going to set that to converted times 365. So what happens here is this. Converted here is whatever the user types in, because we set converted to event.target.value. This means we are targeting the value of the event and we are storing it in this variable here, and the event is an input event. So we are targeting the value of whatever the user inputs. As simple as that. So now we are taking that value and we are multiplying it by 365, and we are storing it in $value using the inner HTML function. So that's that for the $ID. Now let's move over and let's do same thing for the pounds ID. So we are going to say pounds value, and let's set that to document.getElementById, and let's say pounds ID, because that's the pounds ID in our div tag. So let's come over here and let's see this. So as you can see, we have ID, pounds ID. Make sure you write these the same way it's written here in the index.html file. So let's go back to our index.js file. Now let's do the same thing with our pounds ID. Let's say pounds value dot inner HTML, and let's set that to converted multiplied by, let's say 420. So let's go down and let's do the last one for our euro, and let's say euro value set to document.getElementById, and let's grab the euros ID, and let's say euro value dot inner HTML be set to converted times 440. Now let's save that. So let's go over what we have here once more. So over here in index.js file, we set a variable here that grabs the element that has the ID of my input. So we use the input element, which is now stored in this variable called inserted. We added an event listener to it, and event listeners take two arguments always. The first argument is the event. In this case, we want our event to be the input event. So when a user starts typing in anything in our input field, we want to trigger this callback function here. And the callback function contains everything you want to happen inside of it. So that's that for now. So let's go back to our browser and let's see if our app is working. So let's refresh our browser. Let's come over here and let's enter 100. As you can see, the values are coming up automatically. So the 100 here is the value in our input field. So we stored the value in converted, and we come over here and we said converted times 365, converted times 420, converted times 440. So as simple as that, that's the logic. So let's refresh this page and let's type in something else. So as you can see, as we keep typing, it keeps increasing. So that's a basic currency conversion app using just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. If you love this content, press the like button, and if you have any questions, say it in the comment section. Don't forget to share, and don't forget to come back for a new video. Thank you very much.